Hey, this is WhyBeAre with BeamNG.drive, and today we're going to be taking a look at update 0.5.0, which came out quite a while ago, but I've been really busy recently where this is the first opportunity I've had to actually make a video for it. And the first thing I want to take a look at in this video is the new Pessima, which is also the old Pessima. Kind of confusing, right? It's a new addition to the game, but it's an older model than the Pessima that was already in the game. And with that knowledge in your mind that it's just another Pessima, it is pretty similar to what you'd expect, except that it has one version that's actually really fast for a late 80s, early 90s four-door vehicle. Because it's all-wheel drive and it's turbocharged. So like right here, we're already going 70 miles per hour and 80 and eventually 90. Not yet, but soon. And I want to probably use this one for most of the video just because it is so much more fun than the kind of boring economy versions. But you will see the economy versions in the video I do just for this vehicle later on. But I figured I'll give you guys a look at the video of the vehicle in this video as well. And let's go ahead and just crash this thing into something. I think we could get over 100 miles per hour in the crash since I was going about 100 just a second ago. There we go. Nice looking crash. And, well, the interior exploded a little bit. Front seems good. Rear seems decent. But that was nearly 100 mile per hour impact. And, that's going to probably be fatal to everybody in there. Maybe one person might live. I don't know if they're lucky, but yeah, that was a hard impact. And let's go ahead and do one more crash with this vehicle before we move on to the next things I wanted to talk about. And we'll make sure we go in a different direction so we get a different looking crash. So we'll go this way and crash into whatever sounds interesting. And I think the bridge sounds pretty interesting. So let's say we're driving along, fell asleep, and the next thing you know, whoa, you glitch out the car? Really? Well, let's try it one more time. I didn't expect that to happen, but somehow we hit the bridge in an awful angle that managed to get the car to glitch out. Now, if it happens twice in a row, though, that's a pattern. If it happens just once, we'll just say it's a crazy fluke that it happened. So, same idea. There we go. That's much better. Look at the fender. Oh, goodbye, fender. Just watching it fall into the ravine, or the river, whatever you want to call it. And that car is totally immobilized now. And we could look at the inside, and the, is that the hood that's stabbing my passenger? I mean, I'm pretty sure the steering wheel's probably been pushed in some and is also smashing my guy's chest in. Oh, not that bad, actually. It's mostly the, passenger side, because that's the side I crashed with, and they are not doing so well. They're probably gonna die. Next thing I want to take a look at is the tuning menu, which is available on all of the stock vehicles, so let's go ahead and keep using the Pessima for this. Now, before, if you wanted to change the suspension on a vehicle, the only thing you could do was modify the JBeam file. Now, there's a menu you can use to change some of the settings without having to know how the JBeam files work. So, for example, if we wanted to increase the front left camber and decrease the front right camber, we can go ahead and do that just like that and hit apply. And you can actually see the difference. If you look real closely, you can notice this tire is kind of leaning outward, and this one is leaning inward. That is what changing the camber does. And we could also do the same to the rears, or we could actually mirror it in the rear so this thing will drive as terribly as possible. And right now it's on a live updates mode, which means every time you click it, it respawns the car. I personally don't like that mode because usually I want to change a bunch of things all at once, so it makes it a pain. So we're going to go ahead and put that off. So we could change the rear and front cambers like so. And now you can just barely see it on the rear. It's actually harder to see it on the rear than the front because the amount of change is less on the rear than the fronts. So then we could also change the tire pressure so we can make the front tires like 100 PSI and ready to blow up. Then we could have the rear tires already flat, like they already blew up. And this is easy to see. You could just see those tires are flat. Those ones are overinflated, and you can clearly see that because of how ovalish these tires are and how perfectly circular these ones are. We could also change the front toe. Now, toe is kind of hard to explain. Basically, though, if you set it up in an awfully stupid way, it's like the vehicle is already steering to one direction. So now you'll notice like both of the tires look like they're slightly pointed to the right. So when we drive, the car will pull to the right. Like that's something you would never want to do. You never want to set this up the way I set it up, but it's the easiest way to demonstrate what it actually does. So that's that. And we could also change the rears to be the opposite again. So we could go really low, really high, and see this is the live updates kind of like making things like wacky. There we go. So now I don't know how this thing is going to be able to drive at all, but okay, it still pulls to the right. So yeah, this thing is awful to drive, but just showing you the things you can do. And you can also change the track width, and that is basically just how far the tires stick out. So if you look above this car right now, you can see that you really don't see the tire at all, okay? But if we increase the track width, you can actually see the tire sticking out just a bit now from this angle. Before you couldn't see it there. So we increase the wideness of the vehicle. There you go. You could really see it pop out at the rear right there. And that doesn't make it any better to drive because it still pulls to the right though because of what I've done with the toe. But yeah, those are all the things you can modify with the suspension. So you got a pretty good amount of things you can do. Now it's kind of weird that you can't actually say I want the springs to be stiff or anything like that. But you still have quite a bit of things you can mess around with. And oh my goodness, this thing cannot steer. I think the tires just popped. Yeah, I somehow popped the front tires. Like I heard a noise that sounded different. I'm really not sure if that was from the crash sounds kind of looping in a weird way, or if I imagined it, or if there was actually a sound for when the tires popped. I honestly could not tell you. So we're going to try it again, and I'm going to just listen really closely, and I'm going to turn up the game sound so you can listen closely as well. Alright, so again, I heard the noise. It sounded different. Like, it just sounded slightly different, right? You heard it. And if we look, this right front tire is popped. I think there is a sound that's slightly different when you pop the tires. That's actually pretty cool. I did not notice that until just now. That's cool because, you know, I never was driving around with 100 PSI in my tires because that's just stupid. But, you know, I was doing it right now and it was actually making some neat outcomes. So I'm going to just increase the PSI on both the tires to max. And then again, just pop these tires. I just want to see how hard is it to pop the tires now. So what if we just drop it from like 10 feet in the air or something? That's more than 10 feet, but oh well. Oh my goodness, the way the car bounced because of how overinflated the tires were. Like it bounced. Oh my goodness. Well, apparently that won't pop them. At least not from that height. Let's go higher. That popped them. I could tell from the sound. There was a slightly different sound and one of the tires popped. So you can really hear the difference. I'm going to go ahead and turn the game volume way up. Now listen to the way the crash itself sounds and then listen after the crash and it actually sounds like you can hear the sound of air escaping the tires. Alright, here we go. You can hear that, right? There is a definite difference. That's cool. And since we're on the topic of sound, the next thing I want to talk about is the fact that you can actually hear the turbos now. So I'm going to turn the game volume up again so you can listen to that. That actually worked out really well because you could hear the sound of just the tires exploding without really the sound of a crash, which is something I wanted to do, but I wasn't exactly sure how to do that. Now, hopefully you heard when I let go of the gas pedal, sometimes it was kind of loud, other times it was quiet, and there was a difference. And the difference is just how spooled up the turbo is. If it's fully spooled up, it's going to be louder than if it's only partially spooled up. So that means the game is now actually simulating a turbo setup on a vehicle. Before, it didn't actually simulate it. Now it's a real simulation. So the difference was before, if you were driving along in a car that was turbocharged, you would just have X horsepower for whatever RPM you're at. Now you have a realistic representation of how a turbo works. So you actually have to have it spooled up for it to actually be effective. Where before that wasn't something you actually had to worry about. It's one of those changes that's kind of small if you don't really, and you might not even notice the difference, but it is huge for realism and actually simulating how turbos work as far as I'm concerned. So let's go ahead and wreck this thing one more time and move on to whatever I want to talk about next, which I'm actually not decided about, so I'm just kind of stalling you a bit while I figure that out. Alright, I have an idea. The next thing we could go over is a change to the color menu, and I don't know if it'll work with the Pessima we currently have, so I'm just going to change to a car I know it'll work with, which is the rally version of the Ibishu. So if we go to the color menu, we have all of these new color options. And at first you might think, oh, it changes the stickers and stuff on the car. But you're wrong. In this situation, it actually changes the colors on the steering wheel. So you can see right here, changing the color of the center part of the steering wheel. Then we could change the color of the screws on it or bolts. I can't really tell what it is technically. Maybe nuts. I don't know. But you can change the color of that. And here you can change the color of the actual wheel. And you can change the color of the centerpiece as well. So it's just like you can change colors of more things. And it only works on some cars. Some cars it seems like it doesn't do anything at all, or I'm just missing it. But I knew it'd work in this one, so that's why I decided to show you it on this one. And, you know, now I just want to go to a new map, just because I feel like going to a map where it's easier to show things off, like Grid Map. One really small visual addition is the fact that if you crash a car at a high enough speed, it will catch on fire. Now, this is just entirely visual, so it doesn't actually affect the car in any way whatsoever. Like, it doesn't char the car or anything. It doesn't make the J-beam structure more malleable because of the heat. It just looks like fire, which for some reason people were going crazy about. Like, there were so many people, oh my god, fire! But it's like, yeah, it doesn't really do anything, though. It just looks like fire. So there it is. And it helps if you're using a car with the engine in the front, because depending on the car, it depends on how you have to hit it. If you're using like the bowl light, it's really hard to get it to catch on fire using the front of the car. But a car like this one, you crash forward and it'll catch on fire pretty easily. So let's go ahead and put the fire out, because that's the one thing the fire can kind of interact with besides just sitting there and looking like fire. If you put it in the water, it actually goes out. That's about the only thing that I found that the fire does. Like, if you put another car right on top of this, well, I can demonstrate it real quick just to prove it, but if you put a car right on top of a car that's on fire, it does nothing to that car. Like, if it could burn the other car, I think that'd be pretty cool, but nah. You know, actually, we could even put it in the car almost just to really demonstrate. Yeah, like right there. That sound was not the other car. That was the blue car again. So yeah, you know, if the fire was going to spread, it would have, but it didn't. But anyways, you can see this. You put it in the water, and then fire goes away. Also, you notice that there is like water coming out of the, or it looks like the water's evaporating as it puts out the fire. That's actually like an illusion, I think. Yeah, that's actually the engine getting water, and that puts out the smoke like that. So anyways, let's go ahead and, well, I don't need both of these cars anymore, so let's just reload the map real quickly. And there are a few things I can tell you about but not show you. The first is an app you can get on your phone that allows you to control the vehicles by tilting your phone. And I would show it to you, but my phone is my camera, so there's not really a good way to do that. The other thing is that you can now install mods by just clicking a button on the website, and this is only for mods that are like in the resources section and not in the forums. But you just click a single button and the mod's installed just like that. Now, if you have some mods that are really old that have to be installed manually by extracting them and stuff, those ones have to be installed in a different way, so be sure to read up on that. And I might do a video or might not, because it's so simple. I don't think there's really a need to do a video, but if people can't figure it out, I might. But just be warned, you have to do that slightly differently now. And that really about covers all of the non-vehicle specific changes, except for one that's kind of vehicle specific, and that is vehicles can now have controls that do certain things on them that are different than the normal controls. So like vehicle specific controls, I guess is the way to say it. So before with the Cannon, you'd use the blinkers to lift and raise it. Now you have specific controls to do that. So you can hit page up, page down, and all that to lift it and lower it. And you can change those controls as well. I'm not going to bother because I'm okay with these controls, but you can use whatever it lists there to control them. And it's like that for a few of the things. I think it was almost everything that you'd interact with had that. Like the Cannon, the angle tester, the large cannon, the hamster wheel, the large spinner, and the rollover sled, I believe, all had that. But the Crusher, interestingly enough, still uses blinkers, if I remember correctly. Double check that. Yep. Looks like it still uses blinkers. Or it just doesn't operate at all. Okay, the Crusher doesn't operate at all. Unless it has controls that are not listed. I don't know. Crusher's broken, apparently. Just realized that. Right. I can't believe I didn't notice that. Anyways, that now actually covers all the non-vehicle specific changes. So now we just kind of go through the vehicles and list the changes. Now, pretty much every vehicle but the T-Series and the Pigeon had their suspension reworked a bit. For the Barstow, in specific, there was some changes to how it deforms and new coilovers for the drag version, so you could probably go a little bit faster at the drag strip. For the 200BX, we have a new light texture on it, which we can kind of take a quick look at. I forget if it was the front and rears or just one or the other. So here's a look at both. I think it was just the rear, right? Just in case, because I forgot. My little cheat sheet only says new light texture. Whoopsie. So yeah, there's that. And then on the custom version, there's actually a couple of new parts we could take a look at. So grab the custom one. So on the custom one, we have these new fender overhangs. They're just kind of strapped on. And then we have a new lip on the front. And then the race version has a new transmission, and then the LS has a new set of wheels, which I'll let you take a look at. The race one, I won't bother letting you see the transmission because it's not that big of a difference. It's like, oh, it's a new transmission. It shifts differently. It has an extra gear, I think, but that's it. But there's the new wheels. Those things look like so perfect for the time period of this car. Moving on to the Grand Marshal. This one had some small deformation improvements, some tweaked gear ratios, and you have the ability to actually change the interior colors, if I remember correctly. Let me check on that one. I think this is one of the ones that had that ability. Interior color, here we go. So right now it has a tan interior, but if you wanted to, you can make it blue. It's not really a blue, it's like a slightly bluish blue. But yeah, you can change the color on that, which is pretty cool. And quite a bit of the cars have this added to it, but not all of them. They might have it in a later version or something. Oh my goodness, that red is red. Next up is the Corvette, which also has the colored interiors, I'm pretty sure. I didn't write it down, but I think it did. And this one actually is like the best representation of what cars will sound like in future versions, because it has both the sound of the turbo and the new engine sounds. Like, I just wanted to point that out. It's like, that is what cars will sound like in the future of BeamNG.drive. But the DX version has a new transmission. I think it has one less gear. And the LXI, ZXI have some new wheels we could take a look at. Let's go ahead and grab those guys out. I'm surprised the thing was still driving. I was meaning to wreck it. So LXI had a new set of wheels. Take a peek at those wheels. Nothing too fancy, but it's new. It's new. And then it was the ZXI as well. These ones look very similar to the ones. Actually, they're actually identical to the ones that were on the 200BX, weren't they? I just now realized they're identical. Anyways, though, you could also actually see the turbo and intercooler too on cars that have that. So we could just pop off the hood and actually take a look at that real quick. So hood, go away. So you can see there is the actual turbo piping, and then the intercooler. It's kind of hard to actually see the turbo itself, but it's in there. If I remove the front entirely, like the bumper and stuff, it might actually make it a little bit easier to see it. There we go. Now you could really see that intercooler. Still can't quite see the turbo itself, just the pipes. Oh well. It's there though, trust me. I wouldn't lie to you. Anyways, next up is the old Pessima. And the old Pessima, I think it was just some small changes to the way it deforms. And now the stanced version doesn't use customized parts. So now the stance one is actually just this tuning section set up to be a stanced configuration. So it's kind of interesting like that. And you'll notice this one actually has the ability to modify the ride height. Only some of them have that. The other one you saw earlier didn't have the ability to change the ride height. And I think that's the only difference. I think there's supposed to be something about changing the turbos and the way they spool up in that menu, but I haven't seen a car that does it. I don't know which one it would do that with. Oh well. Next up, though, is the Moonhawk. That one, you have some interior colors once again, which you could take a quick look at. And then just some changes to the deformation. Oh, it saved the red. That's kind of weird. It saved the red interior between vehicles. I didn't know it would do that. There's the black. See, I think, to me, go with empty. To me, that's what this card matches with it well. Next up is the Pessima, which is totally new. The Pigeon, there was some changes to the suspension, actually. I think I said there wasn't, but that was wrong. And it now has the ability to have a limited slip differential. Next up is the SBR4. That one, again, some changes to the suspension and some small changes to the way it deforms. And same story for the Sunburst. And I believe it's also the same story for the Bolide. The D15 has actually been separated from the Roamer now, so they're two different vehicles, and it has a bunch of new options available to it. So we have a D35. So this is like the regular D15, but we have all this extra space behind the driver, and we have a dually configuration. We have new fenders over the dually configuration, all kinds of fancy things like that. And then for this one also, the bed of the truck has been reworked, so it's better at holding things in it without glitching out, which I think is a nice thing to have, because it's never fun when you try to carry things and they just kind of fall through the bed of the truck. So let's go ahead and see how strong the suspension is by doing this. Whoops, that's not going to quite test the suspension, is it? Maybe it will. That's a suspension on the side test. So pretty harsh crash. Could you still drive if it was upright? Yes, you could, though. That's impressively strong on that rear suspension because of the dually setup partially, I would think. And you could also have just the extended cab without the dually configuration. So you have an off-road version of the extended cab and a normal one. So here's just a quick look at the extended cab one with off-road. Should be a pretty good off-roader, I would think. I haven't tested it too much, but it seems a little bit better than the stock truck, maybe. It's hard to tell. I haven't done quite enough testing to say for certain. On to the Roamer, we have a alternative sheriff version that's not an off-road version, where before we just had the off-road sheriff. And again, as you see, it is now its own separate vehicle instead of being included with the D-Series truck. And then again, suspension reworks on that one. T-Series, it has some small changes to the deformation. And one thing that I did not know about is that the chute on the cement mixer can actually move around. So with the buttons here, you hit the number pad enter, and just like that, the chute will open up. And it says back doors and left doors and all that. That is for if you have the cargo box version of it. So we can go ahead and grab that. And then if we hit Y and U, you see we can open and close these doors. You can have only one open, or you can hit both at the same time to open both, or you can hit the key that opens both at the same time. Whatever you want. One thing that's kind of weird, though, is that it does keep the name of all of the buttons, basically, no matter which configuration you have. Like, I think it makes sense if it does like a check. Says, does it have cement mixer? Show controls for cement mixer type of thing, you know? But that could come in a future version. And then on to the H-Series. For the H-Series, it actually has that exact same feature I was just showing you on the T-Series. And I crashed the game. But what I was trying to say is that you can open the doors just like you do on the T-Series. You just hit the button and it opens it up. And for the D or H15 version, as in not the 45s, you can actually put a trailer on them now. So we can go ahead and do that real quickly. One thing that's kind of interesting, though, is that the trailer still is only operated by the parking brake. You use the parking brake to operate that, but the doors on the truck are operated using the new hotkey system. And of course, you could drive around looking like a fool, trailer on your truck, doors open, yelling, "I'm the police," if you wanted to. I don't know why you would, but you could. And that about covers all of the vehicle-specific changes. There's one that actually affects a couple of vehicles I just forgot to mention, and I'll just grab a car to demonstrate this. So if you have a vehicle with a dual clutch, the dual clutch is now smarter. So for example, let's say we're driving this car, and I want to downshift. I'm hitting downshift, but the car won't let me because that would just over-rev the engine and possibly cause some damage to it. So it's smarter now. It doesn't let you just downshift when you shouldn't be able to. Now, if you use the manual, you could still do that. It's just the dual clutches that are like that, which is exactly how a real dual clutch works, I would assume. Because, well, it'd be stupid if they didn't, to me. Like, unless you're a race car driver where you know exactly what you're doing, there is no reason for the dual clutch to allow you to do that. So that covers pretty much all the changes to the vehicles. Now, there are some new scenarios we could go over as well. Although I'll probably do a separate video for these in specific, but there are 5 of them that are actually multiplayer scenarios, and right now I only have one controller that works with my computer. So I have to actually go and buy a controller to try these out, so that's not going to be happening today. And there are 2 other new scenarios that are more regular, and I don't know where they are in the list exactly, but one of them is an economy driving challenge. And the other one was a scenario that uses the Pessima, the old Pessima, the old model Pessima, not the one that was just, like, it's the one that was just added, you know what I mean. And is this one new too? I don't remember delivery truck takedown before, but I don't remember reading about it in the changelog. I don't know. I'll figure that out later. Anyways, till next time, this has been WhyBeAre. I'll see ya.